And today we are doing some fascinating investigation of the Olmec culture. How many of you have ever done anything related to the Olmec, read about them, know about them, seen any of their artwork? Okay, so it's totally new. Oh yeah, okay, good. Yes, Lauren, I think we spoke about this. Good. So it's new for most. This is one of the craziest and most fascinating cultures that we're going to look at in this first section of the course. I'm going to say that almost every time we get together because I'm really excited about everything that we're looking at. But the thing about the Olmec is that the work is just, it's mind blowing. So here we go. Let me get you started. All right. We're in this section called Cultures of Cultivation, and you'll see why that's the case. It's sort of ridiculous to say that because every culture has some cultivation mechanism, has some farming mechanism, but particularly with the Olmec, what makes them who they are is really their ability to transform the everyday practice of farming for both subsistence, like individualized farming, and for the greater good, and take that into almost industrial production. Now, does it make sense to say industrial production for something that's 3,000 to 5,000 years old, but still, compared to what was happening before the Olmec, what the Olmec do specifically with corn cultivation and what comes after, it's just night and day. It's like two completely different eras. All right. Our objectives for the day, we're going to look at the site of San Lorenzo. We're going to look at La Venta. Art objects are the colossal Olmec heads, self-descriptive, but just wait till you see them. And we're looking at a few other Olmec sculptural pieces and other artistic practices. We're going to take a brief look once again at the axial plan, which you saw on Monday. And we're going to take a few minutes if we have time at the end to do some formal analysis. If we don't, we'll bump that to next week. All right, so imagine coming up on this sculpture in the middle of New York City, for example, or Paris, or Chicago, or Winston-Salem. What kind of questions does this gigantic head ask of us? And what questions do we ask of it? Yeah, Armand, you had your hand up.
Who is it? Why are they there?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. What in the world? What makes us ask those questions? When you look at this, like, I don't know, but when I look at it, I'm like, jaw dropping, right? But what makes it jaw dropping? Just like very basically.
Its size.
Size. The scale is phenomenal. Look at it compared to these people over here. Look at their heads. It's just crazy. Okay, what else?
It's also
level of detail.
Oops, excuse me.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying the complexity.
The complexity, yeah, exactly. And we'll get into more of what that means. But when you say that, tell me what's complex?
Like the details, like the nose, the lips, the eyes, it's all very specific and like symmetrical.
Yeah, it's very well organized, this sculpture. Great. What else?
Like the contrast between the other buildings, like it's very, at least New York, like it's very geometric and like structured, and then there's this like sort of natural looking like human head, so there's a big contrast there.
Yeah, great point. Absolutely great point. We have these two human-made forms, environments, setups, but just very different in what they are. Yeah, good. Anything else come to mind?
The fact that it's just a head, like typically with tributes for leaders, you'll see like a statue of like their whole body, but this is just like a head.
Yeah, excellent point. We're used to seeing a bust, like kind of as we all show up in Zoom, right? You see sort of from the mid chest up. That's generally what you get. So you're getting something on the shoulders, you get some body scale and size. With just this head here, you know, we don't have any idea whether what would have appeared below this. I say that, but we actually do. But just looking at it, first glance, you don't know, like, is the body going to be in proportion to the head? If the body is in proportion to the head, and it's just sitting here kind of on an elevated platform in the street, you can imagine how many stories down that body would go if there was a body. And even if there's not a body, like the mind just, we have a hard time with the head by itself, right? So the mind just sort of formulates that whether we realize it or not. It's just something absolutely crazy about these sculptures. So where did they come from? We're going to look at first San Lorenzo. And when I say we're going to look at it, that's actually not even correct. Because the truth is, what remains of San Lorenzo is about as much as what's on this blank page. The site of San Lorenzo, although there is nature, there is grass, there is, all the things you expect to see if you kind of went out into the wilderness, but there is nothing of this monumental civilization that created these giant heads. There are tens, up to 40 of these heads that have been found, and 11 of them were found at San Lorenzo. So something had to be happening here at this site. And the mystery of the Olmec, one of the mysteries of the Olmec, and the mystery of these heads really is what happened to the rest of the civilization that produced them. All right, so just for scale. When these heads were first found, this is what it looked like, right? We have the archaeologist here. We're going to talk about him in a minute, but just wandering through this sort of landscape. Actually, he got a tip from a local who was like, hey guy, I think there's a giant eyeball out in the field out there. You might be interested in going to see it. And of course, he took him up on that. He walked out into the field, giant eyeball, and then he sent off for his crew to come back and help do a proper archaeological dig. We'll see what comes after that. So around this area, around San Lorenzo, but not nearby, so let's say about 40 miles away, are these mountains, the Tushlus Mountains, which are a combination of the beautiful lush greenery that you see and what are now basalt quarries. This was the site where the Olmec went to quarry the stone for these Olmec heads. So first, what do we know? It's 40 miles away to get to that stone. The heads themselves are massive. We already have this set up for like, well, how did they get them there? All right, but let's get a little context on the Olmec, because although their original site is gone, they did create a series of many sites after San Lorenzo. And what made them able to spread into the huge civilization that they are has a lot to do, again, as I said, with their cultivation methods. Okay, so on Monday, you looked at the Corral Supe people and Chavin, right? And there we looked at pretty intensive agricultural engineering in terms of what primary commodity, do you remember?
Cotton.
Cotton, yep, right. One of the only times in the ancient world where a non-food substance was used as the primary driver for sustenance in a trade way and for economics. But compared to that, the Olmecs have it on steroids, right? This is an extreme situation of ecological engineering where the city-states are cultivating corn as if their life depended on it, which of course it did. But not only their life, but like the wealth and prolific abundance of their civilization came from their ability to take corn from the kind of everyday food source that it was into something much greater. What made this possible were a series of weather, climate, transformational events. If you think about what's happening in Mesoamerica, which is that region that connects Mexico and Central America, what do you think of the climate there? If you were just guessing, like, what's the weather?
I'd probably guess that it's pretty hot.
Yeah, it's hot. And it's a place where people sometimes go on vacation, which means, right, heat, sun, generally dry. But at the time that we're discussing, around 1900 to 600 BCE, that's not the case at all. It's actually wetlands. It's very swampy and humid in this region, totally different than what we know about it and how we see it today. That's important because it points to and actually made possible this wild abundance of different food sources, different plant sources. On Monday, we talked about the fact that avocados and peppers and all of these different things come from the broader Americas, from Central, South, Mesoamerica. This was really the case as well for the site we're looking at, which is really in modern day Veracruz, Mexico today. Here's a map of Mesoamerica, just to give you a visual. This is actually a map, it's a COVID map. So just keep in mind that Mesoamerica is a term that's still used today to describe this region. It's a way of thinking about Mexico in connection to the rest of Central America, because Mexico, of course, proper is properly in North America. What is not happening here? Sheep, pigs, all the things we think of as like ways to sustain a community or a culture. No, these animals aren't there. Clearly, these are like European pastoral animals. That's not happening anywhere in the Americas at the time that we're talking about. The animals that are there, bison, jaguar, llama, totally different. And again, swampland, right? Primarily very watery land, which made it perfect for corn. Corn is basically, it's a form of a grass. It loves water, it thrives in water, and it actually also depends on human cultivation. So that little weed looking thing here in the middle, this teosinte, this is corn's ancestor, right? Way back in the day, this is what a corn stalk looked like. And this little guy way over here on the far left, this is a corn cob. What happened is over time, human cultivation, particularly Mesoamerican human cultivation, a way of saying like, ooh, I really like this plant. I'm going to spread it around. I'm going to give it the conditions that it will love. And in return, it's going to love me back by producing bigger, better, more corn. This has gone crazy, of course, in the 20th century, but nonetheless, this process of transforming one another, the plant transforming the human community and the human community transforming the plant, started way back then. So much so that by the time, like later in the class, we're going to get up to the Maya, we're going to get up to all of these other civilizations. By that point, corn itself is a god, right? It's not just a plant or a food source anymore. It is so essential to the community that it has taken on a godlike status. All right, we're all about corn today, tacos, tortillas, all sorts of things, right? We have carried on that heritage of the Mesoamericans, maybe not so much in farming. I don't know how many of you can grow corn, but we do like to eat it. And it's part of the way that that important culture has come forward. All right, I'm gonna have to move quickly a little bit. But what happened is that, let's say the Olmec in particular, created a singular dependence on corn. It was the primary resource, the primary commodity. Everything in their culture depended on it. What's the pitfall of that?
If for some reason they lost corn, they wouldn't have anything to like have a backup.
Yeah, exactly, right? Full dependent. What else? What happens at this period in time if your primary everything collapses? What can you imagine socially, politically, otherwise?
Everything else collapses.
Yeah, everything else collapses too, right? If your economic status, I mean, we see that right now, right? We haven't lost a commodity, but we have lost this different sense of health, right, in the world. And so economics, politics, everything is in flux, which creates opportunity. It creates crisis. That's what's happening around the Olmec. That's what we know about them going into the art and artwork that we're about to look at. Okay, here's the timeline. 2700 BCE is the first record we have for corn cultivation. The rise of the Olmec happens around 1200 BCE. Within 400 years, and this is really 300 years, this is really nothing for ancient civilizations. It's very quick. San Lorenzo, the primary site of the Olmec, is abandoned. They move to La Venta. Within short order, La Venta, their new site, is destroyed to the point that by the year 0, we really have very little sign of the Olmec as an independent and separate people. They still exist, but they are more integrated into other groups. All right, let's get into those crazy heads. All right, first, what can we learn from this image? Just looking at it, what's going on? Let's say Moyel, Matthew, or Avery.
It looks like they've just like uncovered this for the first time almost.
Perfect, right? What else?
It looks like it took a good amount of work to, I don't know, sort of get down there.
Yeah, absolutely. What tells you that?
Well, just the amount of people there are.
Right.
So it definitely wasn't like an everyday occurrence.
No, absolutely. The amount of work, the amount of earth that had to be dug out, the labor that needed to occur, and that you've got a great key there, and it's not an everyday occurrence. What about this image? What about this photograph tells us that? This could be open to anyone.
The way they're dressed.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
They're all kind of in nice white shirts that you wouldn't expect people are working, digging up a sculpture to be in.
Yeah, right. They have not just finished digging or they'd be a dirty mess. Yeah, exactly. So this is a staged photograph, and it's staged for a couple of reasons. One, to celebrate the uncovering, as you pointed out. Two, it really shows us the scale, right? The difference between all of these full-size humans and that head in the ground is really dramatic. Good. All right. So let's take a look in 3D at these heads. Now, I'm playing you this video. There's some issues with the full video. There's some stuff in here the guy says that is just in no way accurate, but it is one of the best videos where you can see all the way around the head. You get an idea of its scale in comparison to the speaker, the narrator himself. All right, so here goes. We're starting midway in.
So above here, this is like a mirror reflection of actually what's on top of the head. It's a very strange, very interesting design. It looks like some kind of hands and serpents and sort of mosaic look. So it's very interesting. It's quite an unusual helmet this guy's got. So whether it was made of gold, it was armor, whether it was leather, we just don't know at this point. So this colossal head was found in 1946 at San Lorenzo, and it describes on the information board that it's in fact got evidence of cranial deformation actually on here, and you can see why that would be, because it's like the back of the head has been pushed, crushed inwards, and it's been slightly elongated upwards. So it's quite unusual that we actually get a description of that with this huge, colossal Olmec head. And you can see the symbolism on the back, like a glyph here, is reminiscent of what we saw in the Mexico City Anthropology Museum. And whether that has some meaning, whether it's his name or his role or his level of kingship, we really don't know. But this has got, it looks like it's been chipped again, like with these little holes in it, or whether that's natural, I'm really not sure. This guy looks super powerful, not to be messed with. He certainly does look African.
That's not accurate. Okay, so just looking at these three heads side by side, what stands out when you look at them? And just for reference, those of you who are watching this video async that question, what stands out when you look at it, this is your opportunity to write about that in Slack. I'm asking the group here with me on Zoom, and I'm asking you as well. And any question like that, feel free to answer on Slack. All right. Yes, Armand, I think you had your hand up first.
Yeah, they all have like some type of a helmet on.
Yeah.
So maybe that signifies the fact that they were all army leaders at the same time as being rulers. Maybe.
Could be, yeah, exactly, right. We gotta like when do you wear a helmet? You wear a helmet to protect your head, generally some sort of warrior status, right? Yeah, great point. Ian, I think you also had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like there seems to be like a lot of variety in like the face structures.
Yeah.
So probably they were made after like a specific person or something like that.
Yeah, that's super, super key. Good work. So the fact that they don't all have exactly the same facial structure, the fact that they don't have the same headdress, this isn't just a copy paste. You know, if you looked at sculpture across history, really, if you looked at ancient Greece, if you looked at sculpture in Mali, if you looked across the world, there are two different types of sort of head sculptures. And those are either going to be where you take an archetype and you say like, this is what leadership looks like. And then every figure who's a leader somehow looks exactly the same. Or you have an attempt to represent an individual. And the theory is that what we see, as you pointed out in these heads, is it's an attempt to represent someone in particular. Because across those 40 different heads that have been carved, there's a lot of variation. Good. What else?
The middle one is made of like a darker stone than the two on the sides. So maybe it came from a different quarry, or in like preserving it, it turned a darker color.
Yeah, exactly. We get the real clear idea that this is a very natural stone. It's going to vary from quarry to quarry. It's going to vary within that single quarry that these are coming from, just depending on where it's located, how long it's been buried, the conditions of its burial. Great. What else?
They're all definitely unique, but at the same time, their expressions are very similar. Like they kind of look angry, so that might say something about like what the people thought of their leaders.
Oh, nice. Okay, good. Yeah, good. What about them looks angry?
Just like their eyes, I guess. I don't know, like squinted a little.
Yeah. The shape, just reading the facial expression, you're totally right. Looking at it, and the reason I'm asking you in detail is that part of the class is we're just going to look, and then we're going to look again, and we're going to look again, and it seems tedious and silly, but that way you really learn to read. So great work, Bridget. Yeah, this is not a joyful face, right? This is not a big smile. It's not a big celebration. What are they trying, what's the sculptor trying to evoke in the viewer, in the audience here? With that face, with that facial gesture.
I would think like authority.
Say that again.
Authority.
Yeah, authority, excellent, right? Because it's not it's not exactly an approachable face, right? It's not like the smiling Buddha where you're like, ah, cute, this is the cutest little sculpture, you know? What else?
I feel like between their facial expression and like the size, it was definitely like meant for intimidation.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of scary, especially if you're like an outsider and you suddenly like come across this like big scowling head.
It would scare the shit out of you if you came around the corner and here's this head that's like multiple times your height, serious face. Absolutely. Let's talk about the characteristics for a minute. Okay, the anthropologist / narrator guy. There is a theory that in the earliest days, right, of plate tectonics, when there is a single landmass that connects Latin America, South America, Central America, and Africa, that populations, art, culture were spreading back and forth, and that some of the things that we see in Mesoamerica, let's say pyramids, for example, came back and forth between those two populations. That has been debunked. So when he says that they have African characteristics, he's pointing to that single landmass idea, which is viable as a theory for what was happening tectonically, but it has not held up in terms of who these figures are representing. And we'll get into that in more detail. It's partly to do with the characteristics of the Olmecs themselves, which may have commonalities around the world, but that's what's going on there. Okay, let's keep moving. Great work. And that video is going to replay. Okay, so why in the world are they underground? If you'd created something, I'm just going to ask that kind of hypothetically for a second and hold it for a minute. If you'd created something this monumental, this phenomenal, meant to invoke awe, meant to invoke fear, meant to represent someone in particular, why are they underground? Okay, Armand.
I was wondering, is it possible that it's like some type of not like a mummification, but almost in the sense like they want to preserve their leaders, I guess, if we have established that they're leaders.
Excellent possibility. Laurent, you also had a...
Yeah, so I think it's because after the site is abandoned, they don't want to like have anything to be left for their ancestor. They just
Also a great possibility, right? It's sort of like covering your tracks. You don't want something to be destroyed by the people after you. It could also be mummification, a way of preserving or connecting. We're gonna look at both of these. So
or it's just like the invaders just destroy those.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, and we see that actually in some of them that were not fully buried. There are strikes against them where you can see someone took different tools and weaponry and tried to break these things down, either out of fear that what is this creepy thing? I don't want it staring at us all the time, or really trying to destroy the culture that came before. So all of these are possibilities. Let's hold on to those as we keep looking. All right, so just to be super clear, we're here in that little isthmus between the mainland of Mexico, heading into the Yucatan Peninsula, coming close to Guatemala, right? And if San Lorenzo was the original site, this was abandoned within 500 years as the Olmec moved closer down to the coast to what is known as La Venta. La Venta, San Lorenzo, and Tres Zapotes is part of a trio of city-states that were part of the Olmec Empire. It's still really unclear which one held the most sway, but we know at different times they populated different sections. All right. When La Venta was first uncovered, it was uncovered by LiDAR. Anybody know about LiDAR? We're gonna look at this over and over again. It is a way, it's like a scan, but rather than a microscopic scan that happens on a small scale on a slide and a microscope, etc., this is a scan of the Earth's surface. It's looking for different materials, it's looking for heat, it's looking for different combinations of things out in the forest that are not just forest materials, right? So what we're seeing here is actually a magnetic, it's a scan image, a magnetic scan image. It's not a photograph of a jungle area or something like that. So let's look really carefully. What do you see in this kind of wash of green? Let's see, Andrea or Aaron or May?
There's like a lot of mounds.
Yeah.
Like all throughout, like bumps and like small mounds.
Yeah, great, exactly. We see these sort of raised mound surfaces. Good, what else?
There's like some kind of divide, like slits in the green. So I don't know if it's like road type or water, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, nice. Okay, good. So just to clarify, are we talking about these?
Yes.
Or these?
No, the first one.
The first ones. Okay, good. So to be fair, that is an overlay of a road. So yes, totally modern road. But great read. Okay, what else?
I also think that it doesn't look random. There's definitely some intent to it, even though it's covered in green. Like you can still tell that someone took the time to plan it out and wanted to design it a certain way.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll see this in more and more detail the further we get into the plan of La Venta. There is some organization. And what keys us into that? some of this stuff is so basic, you guys are gonna be like, well, obviously that's what it is. But what points to the organization? Caroline?
I'm sorry, will you repeat the question?
Yes, sorry, I thought you turned your microphone on. It can go out, the question can go out to you, to Caroline, Mackenzie, or Christina. What's the...
Could it be an axial plan?
It could be an axial plan. Excellent. What tells you that that's a possibility?
I feel like you see some sort of like organization and some sort of a grid somehow.
Yeah. There's some sort of alignment. Yeah, excellent. Let's move further into that. As it turns out, for the most part, the most important ceremonial section of La Venta, which is this bit up here, and we're going to zero into that more, is 100% an axial plan. And we know that because if you folded this bit in half, right, these two long raised mounds, the center pyramid, these two sites where these Olmec heads are sitting, this mound, these are all just going to fold right in half perfectly and line up, right? So that's where we see an axial plan. Then there's all this other stuff that feels quite random, that didn't quite make it into the urban planning, or it did, but it didn't need to align. It had different purposes. What's key about La Venta is that it is the very first, it's always tricky to say first in a class like this about ancients, but it is the first city that we see in the Americas that the city itself has an axial alignment. We saw the other day that some of the pyramids, some of those sunken courtyard structures, some of the architecture itself was built on an axial plan, but this is the first time we really see like someone or a group of someone's sat down and said, let's plan out this whole part of the city itself. And to be fair, I'm saying a city, it's not necessarily a city in the way we think about it. We think about a city as like, okay, you've got people living here, you've got spaces of worship, you've got grocery stores, you've got all your stuff all mixed in together. This was primarily a ceremonial center, and it's thought that the Olmec peoples really lived quite far away from it, at least 10 miles outside of the city, maybe even outside of the ceremonial center, maybe even further. So just to clarify what's happening there. Here's a clearer way of looking at it. So up here in complex A, we see these long strips, which you could see back here. That's what these are, these long raised mounds. If you're planning a region like that, what's happening? Why would you put those long, or what does it do to bodies when you create those long mounds like that?
Kind of funnels them and kind of makes them go in that direction.
Absolutely. It either funnels them in or it keeps them out, right? It's just like wall structures. So there's some sort of intent there for how people are going to arrange themselves. We see a little bit more about that. We know that there is a sacred tomb here, and then we have this thing. We have this raised lump of a space. It's more than a lump. It's quite big. But what can you imagine is under there? What kind of structure? What's the shape of the architecture?
Are there bodies under there, possibly?
This is a great question. This is a great point. Generally, there's some sort of entombment. Archaeologically, we haven't found any bodies in there yet. Doesn't mean they're not there. What kind of structure do you think is under this mound? Avery?
Maybe some kind of temple or pyramid kind of shape.
Exactly. So this has been highly debated, right? In this image that I'm showing you here, it looks like a kind of this little diagram. Oops. It shows a little fluted. It almost looks like, you know, something you could do with a pastry, with a little pastry tool, right? You could do something that's kind of roundy, maybe flower-like. And for tens of years, it was thought that that was the case. Further archaeological evidence has shown that actually underneath there is one of the very earliest step pyramids in the Americas. And we'll see more and more what step pyramids look like, but they are geometrically formed. They are made up of squares offset by further squares. It's not just fluted the way that it looks. All right, here's another image just showing you that axial situation. In that primary axial center, right? If this is the base of that pyramid, we're looking down the middle of these large mounds. One of the weirdest things that happens here at La Venta that we don't see, at least not on this scale, we don't see on any other site in the Americas, very few sites around the world, although they do exist, are what are called massive offerings. So under the ground are these spaces, maybe the size of half of a football court, where thousands and thousands of axe heads have been polished to perfection, beautifully arranged and lined up and then buried. And it's about 15 to 20 feet deep, these massive burials. There's sometimes there are these large basalt columns that look like huge tree trunks up above them, but they're stone that are showing the site. Again, like, why are these being buried underground? On top of those sites, there's evidence that some of this imagery was there. It's hard to see because I have it at a little bit of an angle, but does it look like anything you've seen before? If you were going to try and interpret what this design or image is, what might it look like?
It looks kind of like a face still.
Yeah.
Like eyes and nose and mouth at the end.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got probably the eyes up here at the top. Maybe it could be here. Nose structure, mouth. What kind of face? Yeah, Ian.
I don't know if this is just me, but it kind of looks like the 4 points on the top are in the shape of a crown of some sort or something like that.
Nice. Yeah, they do have a crown-like look to them, right? It's clearly pointing you to the top of something. Good. So there are further engravings, carvings, evidence around this site that it was meant to look like a fanged jaguar, right? And that some of this action at the top is mimicking that snake imagery that we've seen before. And we saw that in Chavin, we saw that in Corral, we saw that was way over in Peru. So it's not clear if these two groups are in conversation or not, but you will see again and again throughout the Americas, this fanged jaguar, the appearance of snakes, we're gonna see birds coming in, and just like basically that's because these are the primary predators in the area, right? These are the strong animals, the one that look like they're dominating. And so we see that in the imagery at its most basic. They could have been in conversation, but we don't know for sure. All right. We've got this theme. Things are being buried. These huge heads are being buried. These thousands of axe heads are being buried. Something's up with burial, right? And you've pointed to 3 possible causes earlier for what's happening. There, in many of the lakes around this region, it was watery, remember, it was really swampy. Anywhere water is showing up, there have been, we have seen sacrifices of small heads, mostly wooden and stone. The wooden ones are super rare to find. Why would that be?
They probably just decompose easier.
Yeah, totally. Most of them just decompose. The ones that have been found are pretty crazy looking because they became waterlogged and they became real soft. Under compression, under that lake, they actually squished down. And so you see the face as a skinny, weird little thing because they've been compressed as if they were like sponge-like. But we know from other archaeological evidence that the idea is that the gods are in the underworld, right? And that underworld is not, it's not for the Olmec and a mythological underworld. It is really like under your feet, right? So when they are burying things, they're burying them for the gods that are right there. And their gods take on these different forms. They're snakes, they're predatory birds, they're jaguars. They're often animal-centric, but anthropomorphized. Okay, so knowing that most of that, the world of the deities is happening under the ground, take a look at this image here and tell me what you see. Take a minute or two to just write down some notes or think it through a little bit. All right, what's happening? Let's see, John, Mackenzie, or Jason?
Well, the face still has that like helmet-like structure on it. So maybe that kind of signifies that they're protected even in the underworld.
Excellent. We've got some continuity between those big heads. We have the helmet. Good.
And I feel like this figure is sitting at the entrance of something.
Yeah, good. What might it be the entrance of?
Maybe the entrance to the underground world.
Yeah, good. And what about the shape of this thing? And this can be open to anybody. What about the shape of the thing connects it to that underworld?
Huge. And it's huge.
Yeah,
it's thing, it almost looks like a bridge.
Yeah.
It just kind of reminds me of like the troll sitting under the bridge guarding something.
Totally. Yeah. We've got this creepy troll thing that's about to come up and out. Yeah, good. And so we've got this entrance to the underworld. Part of the underworld is conveyed by the fact that this sits on the ground. It sits on the ground now and it sat on the ground before, right? So it's almost as if this figure, it's not almost, it is as if this figure is emerging out of a cave, right? Coming up and out of the ground. What's going on with its hands?
It looks like it's holding a rope.
Yeah.
A rope, maybe?
Yeah, excellent. What's the purpose of the rope?
Maybe he used the rope to like pull himself up.
Yeah, 100%, right? It's almost like when a diver goes underwater, you keep a hold of something where you can yank so that you come up and out when you need to. It's a way of getting down into that underworld and making sure that they can come back. Yeah, good. So there are a few more things going on in here. If we had more time, we'd look at it. We have, again, this sort of jaguar face. We have these almond-shaped eyes. A lot of this, of course, is worn away over time. There are spectacular images that are now done, again, with magnetic scans, not LiDAR, but just magnetic scan, where you can see the intricacy and the real beauty of these designs. They almost look real modern in their elegance and simplicity. But they're not, of course, they're ancient. Okay, so on each side of those massive burials, in the middle of that axial section of La Venta, you have two of these stone structures. In a lot of the world, this shape would imply that it's a tomb, that someone has been buried inside here. These are solid, they're not a tomb. And it's thought instead that the ruler would have sat on top of here. It would have raised and elevated them as they spoke out. And this figure down here is conveying what that leader is supposed to be. Someone who can translate, who can come back and forth at will, using that rope, right? Using a very specific connection between the land of the deities and the land of the Olmec. In addition to some of the axes that were buried under there, we have a lot more of these masks in jade, very precious stone that again is not local. These Olmec people are traversing marsh, jungle conditions to go get very, very precious stone. Jade had a high value. It was rare. It was harder to access. And so we can see where more jade is present, there was probably a higher economic status amongst the people, or at least power. And then there are some crazy, crazy little burials like this. So I've shown you those gigantic heads that are between 10 and 40 tons each, right? They weigh more than, I don't know, 10 to 20 ambulances, those big heads. And then we have this tiny, tiny little sculpture. These things are like, each of these little figures is about 7 inches high. And these were found again in one of those massive burial sites. They've been interpreted over time to try and figure out what's going on. Is this a male and a female figure? Is this symbolizing an elite or sort of like royal wedding? Is this a confrontation? What are we seeing playing out here? And why did they take the time to make these little figures? But of those little figures, when you look at them, what features stand out? It's hard because they're tiny and I've got them tiny on the screen, but what's one thing when you look at them and you think, okay, well, they have this?
They still like proportionally have really big heads.
Yeah.
Like, even though they're small figures.
Exactly, exactly. And this happens again and again and again, this elongation of the head. We saw it in those massive, in the colossal heads. We see it in these tiny heads. We see it in figures. I think I have some images coming up. We see it in figures. This little child, for example, has an elongated head. What's happening there? If a certain physical characteristic shows up again and again in these highly prized sculptures, what can we interpret about that physical characteristic?
Maybe they thought that like having a bigger head was like a bigger brain, like a bigger mind, and that was important to them culturally. So they wanted to depict that in their important figureheads and things.
Yeah, yeah, before an understanding even of the brain, right? But there was something special about the people born with elongated heads. And not only was there something special about those born with it, we have evidence in those large heads themselves, in the masks that show up, that there was actually a practice of cranial deformation. So some of those things, those masks, those helmets, some function that they're playing is to flatten and squish the head, the cranium, the bone structure. And what does that tell us?
Well, that maybe there's like a higher status associated with having a more like elongated head, so that more people wanted to have that physical feature.
Totally. And what about, you're absolutely right? There's a higher status with this physical trait. It's a random physical trait. They've picked a random physical trait and said, we're going to prioritize this physical trait. And not only that, we're going to like hurt ourselves, right? There is injury. In some cases, there's brain damage. They didn't understand about the brain, right? But there's brain damage that happens in that process. And it's not almost, like this is one of the early stages of fashion, right? Where we see like, here's a trend. It's not just fashion, it's beauty. It's an idea of an ideal that people push, squish, deform, aspire to, whether or not, there's no objective beauty, right? But within this culture, that's considered beautiful, and then everything is moved toward that idea. It comes at a huge cost. We see that not only here, we see that in current culture, right? Okay, this funny little guy is going to tell you all about cranial deformation, but we're going to skip it for the sake of time. Just again, on the importance of the jaguar in this culture. If you saw this beautiful predatory jaguar animal out in nature, it's awe-inspiring, they're powerful, and this translated into religion after religion. This is an image of, they're called were babies. like a werewolf, you know, but instead of becoming a wolf, it's becoming a jaguar. So it's this human jaguar transformation. This is too, is just eroded to the point where the poor little guy looks like a frog. But some of these things point toward this idealization, not only of cranial deformation, which we see again here, and this thing, which may or may not be a helmet or may just be a cranial masher, basically, is pointing again toward the ideal in that society, or the perceived ideal. All right. One last thing that I want to introduce you to, and I realize that we are at the end of time. Well, we're not for the class, the time is almost up. Okay, so the name, the Olmec itself, simply in later Mayan language means the rubber people. That's important to note because it means that historically other groups looked back at this group and thought, okay, they had something to do with rubber. There are all sorts of reasons why this is the case, right? Trees themselves, the roots grow underground. There's a connection between the underworld, the overworld. What's coming out of those rubber trees, what's seeping out is seen as something deified. But this turns into one of the most important practices we see again and again throughout the Americas, which is the ball game, the Mesoamerican ball game. We're not going to go into it in detail today, but like, think about this. 4,000 years ago, we have this early practice of sport, right? We have this highly prized material being used to create a ball, which then creates an arena, a set of practices, which may have been political, it may have been used to settle disputes, it might have just been entertainment. I'll go into that more going forward. All right, we've covered a lot. I've talked at you a lot. Questions, comments? No? All right. Thanks for your participation today, and I will see you again next Wednesday. All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, so I have a question.
Yeah. Great.
I don't think I was supposed to be in this class. I'm part of the Monday group, I think.
Okay.
But so I guess I'm just still confused as to how the async days are working.
Yeah.
So you post a lecture after class, and then is there a certain set of questions I'm supposed to answer, or is it just random kind of comments?
Just random, and I know that feels confusing for everyone. So what I'm going to do is, once you and I finish, this recording gets uploaded as the async lecture, and then the Monday group, which wouldn't have been with us today, with your exception, will watch it. And then any of the times that I asked y'all, okay, what do you see? What does this look like? What do you think's going on here? Just pick like 3 of those and respond to them in Slack. Just as if we were in class discussing, and I'd be like, Cole, what do you think about blank? But I can't do that, of course, when it's async. So that's how it works. Yeah, it's very loose. It's not like I'm going to be like, oh, you didn't answer this question I asked. It's more of like, are you paying attention? What do you think? And it helps me gauge where you are in your understanding too. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Yep. Happy to help.
All right.
Okay. Take care.
You too.